Hello, I'm Curiosity, and today I will talk about the TMNT comic series created by IDW. In my opinion, the best TMNT comic series ever created. I will explain why, of course, but we'll get to that later. First, a few words about the IDW itself. When it comes to American comics, there are essentially two names that everyone, even remotely interested in comic books or pop culture, true publisher behemoths that together dominates the markets and their fan imagination: Marvel and DC. Both companies founded in the 30s, and therefore with a huge history. Everyone knows their characters. Batman and Superman from DC and Spider-Man from Marvel are obviously household names. IDW is one of the companies I would call the big league, right after the two mentioned above, along with publishers like Image, Dark Horse, Boom Studios, etc. IDW is a relatively young publisher, founded in 1999. They published a ton of licensed comics: Transformers, G.I. Joe, Sonic the Hedgehog, Star Trek, Godzilla, Ghostbusters, My Little Pony, and many others. And one of these licenses turned into something much bigger than the rest: Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Today marks the 50 years since they published the first issue of their original series about these turtles, so you can say that they've been with the company for more than half the publisher's existence. And before I start writing about the universe they are creating, I will add that IDW is also a fantastic publisher when it comes to reprints. They release various collected editions of comics from the past, from Mirage, RC, and OG TMNT publishers. Apart from licensing issues that are too complicated to discuss in this video, they've reprinted or will reprint practically everything. They also publish new and original series other than the one that I want to focus in this video. Saturday Morning Adventures, for example, has a fun adventure tone in the style of the first TMNT animated show, where the last running series is more serious, you might even say dark, and is based on a story idea that Kevin Eastman and Peter Laird, the creators of the franchise, combat back in 1987. But let's move on to the main IDW TMNT series, and the first issue. I mentioned that today marks the 50th anniversary of its premiere, which took place on August 24, 2011. But I can leave out the preview IDW handed out at the San Diego Comic Con, which took place from July 21 to July 24, and 2011, of course. It contained the first 8 pages of the first issue, which totaled 22 pages, so it was a little over a third of the content. Additionally, the preview also included several pages with the creative team behind these comics, as well as 10 questions. But the official release, available to everyone and not just people in San Diego, was on August 24, 2011. This comic came up with an interesting solution to the problem of what do we put on the cover, by creating 4 basic covers which were distributed in a 1:1:1:1 ratio. Meaning that in a comic book store ordered 40 copies, they would receive 10 of each variant, and so on. And the variants, surprise surprise, were versions featuring each of the turtles: Raphael, Michelangelo, and Leonardo. And of course, we got a ton of other covers, some rarer than others, like this Kevin Eastman cover, where it says listed 1 for every 10 copies of the basic variant they ordered. But that's also not what I want to talk about today. One day I will probably make a video about my top 10, top 20, top 50 maybe covers from the IDW, because I like much of many of the covers from the IDW are amazing. But that's digression. Back to the topic. I will avoid major spoilers, that is, until the final section, but I will probably share some very minor details here and there. The first issue is a bit of action, a bit of plot, and a bit of the Turtles origin story. We meet most of the classic characters here. All-4 Turtles and Splinter, Appy, Casey, and Baxter Stockman make their debuts, as well as General Crank and another character whose identity won't be a spoiler. We also see 2 brand new characters who will play both minor and major roles in this series, Wednesday and Hop, but more on them later. What is certainly noticeable is the fact that the turtles don't have colorful bandanas. This is a deliberate nod to the OG comics, where all the turtles also wore the same colored bandana, red. Originally only on the covers, as the comics themselves were black and white. But here, it mainly serves as an interesting nod to that era, and has a plot justification, as they receive bandanas in their typical colors as early as in the 5th issue. As I said, I'm trying to avoid spoilers, so well, I will say I love this series. It has an interesting, if perhaps a bit slow, start. But that mattered more for people who started reading it 50 years ago. I started a few years after the launch, when there were already a lot of issues, so I read the first issue in one sitting and I was completely hooked. I really like digressions, so it's time for a little digression away from the main topic. Over these 15 years, we've got more than 300 issues, so there's plenty to read. Let me digress a bit about how you can divide the main TMNT series, especially this, whose title is simply Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Volume 1 is the original Mirage series, running for 62 issues, published between 1984 and 1993. There are some problems with this number, as not all comics from this series are considered canon, but the issues from the Quest era are a topic for another time. Last July, we received a comic widely advertised as the 300th issue of TMNT. A marketing ploy to boost sales for the purposes of discount. Only sales with TMNT in the title were counted, and all 62 issues from Volume 1 were included. Volume 2 is also Mirage, but this one was much smaller, with only 13 issues published between 1993 and 1995. All 13 issues counts toward the 300 issue total. Volume 3 was published by Image between 1996 and 1999. This series ran for 22 issues, and all these issues count towards the 300. However, I must mention that the series wasn't concluded in the original run, but received two continuations/endings later. One was a pair of issues completed primarily by fans, intended to serve as a bridge between volumes 3 and 4. I will explain why the bridge was needed in a second. IDW reprinted all 23 official issues of this series under the Urban Legends banner, and also published 3 new issues, specifically created for this reprint and concluding the series. However, neither the 2 fan-made issues nor the 3 new IDW issues are included in the calculation that led to the 300th issue last month. Volume 4 marks the series' return to Mirage, but Peter Laird didn't consider the events of Volume 3 to be significant or canon. He started the series as if that comic never happened, and cited the difference of the status quo in that series and what we see in Volume 4 was quite significant. Fans were trying to explain how this series could happen in a single timeline, which is why they created the already mentioned unofficial 2-issue bridge. Anyway, Volume 4 is 22 issues long, and 28 regular issues were published between 2001 and 2006. Then the list became extremely irregular, with 1 issue each in 2008 to 2010, and 1 currently final issue in 2014. And that series also didn't have a proper ending. IDW is currently publishing this series under the Journeys label. Who knows, maybe we see some kind of conclusion, like with Urban Legends. But I don't think there's been an announcement on that front yet. Anyway, all 32 issues comes toward the 300 mentioned above. In 2003, we also get 7 issues of a series also essentially titled Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, published by Dreamwave. But it was never counted as a separate volume and does not count towards the 300th issue. The actual Volume 5 is the series this video is about, an ongoing series from IDW, which has 150 issues. And our 150 issues count toward the 300. After Volume 5, we smoothly transitioned into Volume 6, which essentially continued the storyline, only starting the numbering from 1 again to attract more new readers. The 20th issue of this series came out a month ago and was widely advertised as the 300th issue. This series is, of course, still in production. I've talked a lot about the number 300 and 300 issue. I think it's worth moving on to another, let's discuss the topic. So, a digression in the digression. Science Volume 6 begins with issue 1, according to the list on Wikipedia, including several issues taking place after issue 150, such as the 5 issues of the Mutant Nation series and Alton Destiny of the Foot Clan. Volume 5 has a total of 300 issues. But you can also count the issues based on the contents of the IDW collection, and the final 18th volume of this series contains only Untold Destiny of the Foot Clan from the material set after issue 150. Speaking of the IDW collection and the things like Mutant Nation, and the fact that the series has 150 numbered issues, but I'm talking about 300 overall, it's time to explain the difference. You could say that throughout the entire run of this series, we have 2 parallel tracks. The main ongoing series, numbered sequentially, and spin-off mini-series focusing on various characters and stories that later had varying degrees of importance to the mainline. These spin-off series can be divided into 3 types. The first type contains of series like the micro-series and macro-series, Reprints, each containing 8 issues, and the macro-series, which has 4 issues. Within this series, each issue focuses on exploring a specific character in greater depth. The second type is multi-issue mini-series, such as A Secret History of the Foot Clan, Shredders in Hell, or the Armageddon Game. to name just a few. They can range from 3 to 8 issues, and they maintain stick continuity within given miniseries. The third type is the 25 issue universe series, which is a mix of all the options. For example, some stories span 5 consecutive issues, and most issues contain more than one story. Are these side stories worth reading, or can you just focus on the main series? In my opinion, they are definitely worth reading. The vast majority of them, anyway. They add a ton of additional lore. Some of the best issues in the entire series, like the 4th issue of Turtles in Time or all issues of the Michelangelo Animals miniseries, are such side stories. There are also some duds. Personally, I find the stories in Vivo and Rocksteady Destroy Everything, Vivo and Rocksteady Hit the Round, and Dimension X quite boring. But there are a smart part. Most are excellent, and of course, it's all a matter of personal taste. There are so many more great ones than boring ones that it's worth reading the whole thing, in my opinion. And it's definitely worth giving this incarnation a chance. After all, if you don't like it, you won't have to struggle through 300 issues just because some fanboy highly recommended it. And speaking of reading the whole thing, now I will take a look at the available reading options. I won't say anything about illegal options, or I won't pretend I've never used one, but never mind. Reading options can be divided into 2 types, physical copies and digital copies. Digital options are varied. I know you can buy many issues for like the $2 on Amazon. I've also seen people recommend checking what your local libraries offer, online lending, etc. It's mainly an option for the US citizens, so I haven't tried this option, for geographical reasons. Another tempting option is to snag a deal at Humble Bundle. You just have to find it. As I'm reading this, and in the day of publishing, I think still, for just 23 euros, or it's like 25 to 27 American dollars, you can get a set of 34 items, including 80 volumes of the IDW collection, which collects all the IDW issues. Plus you get a ton of additional series like The Last Ronin and a bunch of Saturday Morning Adventures, a huge bargain. The only downside is that you have to find it. As of the day of the publishing of this video, there is such an offer, but it will end in 3 days. But if you miss it, it's definitely an option worth checking out, and keep an eye for the next one. Physically, there are 4 options. You can go the traditional route, collecting individual issues. I have to admit, it's a nice option. I'd love to have all the TMNT stories as individual issues. In the US, this option is probably much more enjoyable, as you can find many of them on the eBay, I imagine, or elsewhere relatively cheaply. Certainly much cheaper than in Europe. One downside is that you have to keep track of the reading order and sometimes juggle issues. Read an ongoing issue, a half of issue of universe, return to the ongoing issue, and read the rest of the universe after the next 5 issues, etc. The second option is the buy various TVBs, which collects several issues, usually 4, rarely 3, sometimes 5 or even 6. In this form, you get both the main series and the spin-off series. Of course, there are no mix-ups, so you have 4 issues of the ongoing series, 4 issues of the Casey and Effie side story, etc. A very cool option, but again, you have to juggle comics to read them in the optimal order. The third option is my preferred choice, and in my opinion, the best way to collect the series, the IDW collection, published in hardcover and softcover. We get the entire volume 5 already in the hardcover editions, the softcovers are still being published. A huge plus is that everything is arranged chronologically. You can just sit down, read, and enjoy it in intended order. And such a set looks amazing on the shelf. I really like to just take a look at this comic sometimes, I have to admit. The fourth option is the most recent, and it makes me seriously wonder what the shell. We are talking about 3 volumes of the compendium, each collecting 50 issues of the ongoing series, and only this. All the side stories are omitted. That makes very little sense. Well, I honestly don't recommend it. When researching the topic, I came across a statement by user Night Nachos on Reddit. He said that he is currently reading through all the hardcover collections, and other than a few Rocksteady and Pivot minis, every other issue feels like it fits directly into the next issue. He also said, like, it's hard to even differentiate between what's the next TMNT issue and what's a mini-series or whatever. Which is like very true, both about the bebops and about everything else. I advise against this edition. That's all I will say. For reading volume 5, it doesn't matter today. The IDW collection is the best way, whether you go digital or physical. Well, as the Mandalorian say, But I must mention here that for continuing reading, it's best to read single issues, because it's the fastest way to get new content. To illustrate, I will say that issue 1 of the series was published 15 years ago, on August 24, 2011. We received a trade paperback with this and the next 3 issues in February 2021, about 6 months later. But we received the IDW collection containing these and 11 subsequent issues, 5 issues of the Mirage series, and a story A Lot of Learn on June 2015. Yes, that's almost 4 years later. And for the later issues, it was better, but not much. The IDW collection volume 18 collects, among others, issue 158 to 150. This last issue was published on March 22, 2023. The trade paperback with this issue was published in September 2023, so only 6 months later. But the mentioned IDW collection wasn't released until September 2025. That's 2.5 years since the issue released. The collection is best if you want to catch up to this series, but once you catch up, you will probably want to stay up to date, then well, I will not say anything more. But what I will say, it would be foolish not to mention something that is and isn't part of IDW. Crossovers. One, with Ghostbusters, is canonical. It got 2 installments listed in the IDW collection as an integral part of the main TMNT universe from IDW. But we also got a whole series of crossovers in which characters are clearly taken from IDW series, but their adventures are not considered canon. We are talking about 3 volumes with Batman, 3 volumes with Power Rangers, and a crossover with Street Fighter in which Jenica ever appears. The Masters of the Universe crossover also has a strong IDW vibe. Naruto actually stands out with a different incarnation of April. And there's the crossover with Stranger Things, where the Turtles have a strong Mirage vibe, as suggested by, among other things, their red bandanas. Next topic. The IDW universe has introduced a whole bunch of new characters, and they are great, like Old Hope, a combination of Nick Fury and Magneto, a mutant supremacist who never become a caricature of himself. He repeatedly used very evil methods, but he truly isn't interested in power for himself. He really fights for mutant self-determination. I had even more praise for this guy, with many major spoilers in the recording and another 5 great TMNT things, part 3. Besides, across the 3 parts I've published, from the 15 things I listed, 7 are about comics and characters created by IDW. You get Hope in the 5th issue, and so does Lindsay Baker, who is also an interesting new character, but much less important. Well, she is not on the same level as Old Hope, that's for sure. The list of awesome new characters IDW has introduced can go on. We are also getting Alopec, the Arctic Fox, who will become a regular feature in the comic. I won't spoil it, so I stop here. A large portion of the Mutanimas team is new. We have classic members like Mondo Gecko, Man Ray, and Seymour Goods, aka Mutaken Man, but we also got some additional mutants. I mentioned already the Old Hope, but we also get the Herman the Hermit Crab and Sally Pride, the Lioness. And there are a ton of other mutants like Budgeon, Shark, Koya, All, and Bonnie, Turtle Punk Frog. There are also some kid characters like the Wizards, Zing, Zana, and Mushroom, and the small albino turtle Lita. Lita is also a character I really liked, and I dedicated part of one of my top 5 TMNT things videos to her. And speaking of this recording, another thing was about Jenica. This will be a minor spoiler, but let me say that she is an important character. She is basically the 5th turtle, and I think it's the best realization of the concept in the whole franchise. From my point of view, of course. Sadly, I have some reservation about how she is handled, in the sense that the 2 Jenicas miniseries aren't my favorites. When she is on her own, I find her quite boring, but when she is with the other 4 turtles and other main characters, she adds a lot of new and interesting elements to the group dynamic. On the one hand, she is a turtle like them, but her background is different, and I love it. And that's still not all the new characters. There is Harold, a genius human who has a love-hate relationship with Donatello. There is Dr. Jasper Barlow, a psychomutant doctor. There is Dan, quite a few characters. And I only mention characters who has larger roles, but there are also a ton of cool one-off characters. Did I mention I love this series? I've already raved about the new characters IDW has introduced, but there is also the matter of what IDW has done with the existing characters. These versions of the well-known characters are my favorites, like Alpha Turtles, Splinter, Shredder, April, Casey, Stockman. I love how they're handled here. I love it, really. Other characters, well, I mentioned Slash in the top 5 video because I absolutely adore him. The same goes for what the series has done with Metalhead, or Bishop, or Rat King, the whole development of Grant and the Utroms and Triceratons. I simply love this series, yes, which I think you can already tell. I've almost reached the point where I'm going into open spoilers, so it's time to explain why I consider this series the best TMNT series. If I had to pick two series that are top of the line, it probably won't be a surprise which two I'd pick. And besides the series that I'm talking about, I'd say Volume 1 from Mirage. The first issue is a small masterpiece, but overall, I'm placing the series lower, because the IDW one is simply much more consistent in quality. Volume 1 had a lot of good issues, but so many terrible ones, and a worse ratio of great issues to bad ones than IDW. So I'm going with IDW's work. So, time for full spoilers. Like, here I will be talking about the most important plot twists, character deaths, plot surprises, etc. without any restriction on warnings. If you want to avoid this content, it's time to stop watching. I hope you enjoyed this recording so far and decided to give the series a chance. Now, spoilers. The first thing I'd like to touch on is the origin of the turtles, namely the fact that here they are siblings and Splinter is their real father. We learned that very quickly in the 5th issue, and when I say they are truly related, I didn't mean their turtles and rat incarnation, of course, but the fact that they were previously humans. In Splinter's case, this idea has already been explored, that he mutated from a human, I mean. But here we are talking about something different, reincarnation. We learn that Hamato Yoshi, his wife, and 4 sons arrived in ancient Japan, but they all died tragically, killed by Shredder. But he and his sons were reincarnated in modern times. I really like this concept, which adds a lot of mysticism to this version of the Turtles. The further you go, the more the information you get. The theme of reincarnation, the afterlife, returning from it, etc. It all will be truly explored. I will say that we learn some important details about the incarnation and its symptomasis in the last issue of the ongoing series Volume 5, issue 150. And speaking of, one of the Turtles' enemies is the Pantheon, a group of immortal divine beings whose pastime is gambling/fighting for world domination, and they are using mortals as pawns. This reminded me a lot of plot from one of Pratchett's books, Interesting Times, where the gods played a similar game. Among the 150 issues of Volume 5, there are actually 4 story arcs. The first, the Turtles' battle with Shredder, culminated in issue 50 of the series and ended with a massive earthquake. And Splinter defeated Shredder. No surprise here, but I still remembered how surprised I was when Kari offered him the position of leader of the Foot Clan, and he accepted. A huge plot twist and a change in the status quo. And you could say that subsequent issues revealed about this, with the grand culmination occurring in issue 100, where Splinter disappears/dies, Shredder returns, and Kitsune's plans for the return of Dragon Warrior are undone. Later, we had 2 major storylines. The first was the Armageddon game, which concluded around the issue 138. It focused on the Rat King, so Pantheon is one again and incredibly important. In parallel, we had the Atron invasion storyline, with Metalhead playing an interesting role, but the Rat King is the most important. And the Turtles explore their mystical powers. From there, we transition quite quickly into a storyline where our main antagonist is Armageddon, a time-traveling being who poses a threat to the universe. Well, these storylines raises the stakes enormously, again, and Donatello is portrayed very negatively here, in several ways, including his quest for control that practically brings the world to its knees. Besides these minor storylines, we had a ton of smaller storylines along the way, sometimes intervening with the main ones, and the building blocks that slowly build. A few of the most moving storyline scenes that I remember vividly are the deaths of individual characters. Mutagen Man near death in issue 1 of Mutant Animals, the scene where he asks to be killed is moving. The whole plot of mutant experiments is touching, and Old Hope, whom I adore, is strongly connected to this plot. Arrow, his idea with the mutagen bomb and the mutating of hundreds of random new workers, well, it opened up a whole new world of possibilities. For example, that the fact that the mutation become public and widely known. It changes a lot of the dynamics, the creation of Mutant Town, but it was a violation of these people's rights. That's not how it should be done. And another character, Donatello. His death was moving. The first time I read it, very moving. And the whole plot remains incredibly interesting to this day. Admittedly, the death itself is less moving or has less of impact on rereading, because as we read on, we immediately learn that he is not dead after all. We do see him adapt to his new situation, living for a while in the body of a robot, Metalhead. This also has powerful consequences later, as Metalhead gains self-awareness after Donnie returns to his normal body. You could call him an evil twin of Donnie. And then there is the moving 4th issue of Turtles in Time, where Donnie is the only turtle left alive. It's a potential future, but well, I love it. These refrains where we learn that Donnie is the only one alive, really amazing. And his talk when they are back in their times, that he sometimes thinks about quitting the fight. It's I don't have words to say how amazing it is. Splinter's death in issue 100 is okay, but in issue 89 we have a much more interesting case. This issue maintains a strong Crystal Scarrow vibe, with Splinter being visited by various characters and seeing various visions, including his own death at the hands of the Turtles. And that scene really moves me. And Slash. I love Slash. His passing is perhaps one of the most moving scenes, because his story is very tragic. He's been under so much control, with so little time to be himself, and he dies. The other stories are moving when I reread them, but for Slash, I must only think about this one to feel sad. Poor Slash. It's not canon, but I'm also incredibly moved by TMNT Deviations, a comic that has a what-if feel. The starting point is the events of the main series, but while in that one Casey is wounded by Shredder and Leo is kidnapped and brainwashed, in Deviations, Casey is killed and all four Turtles are brainwashed. It's a brilliant, grim one-shot, and reading this is a moving experience for me. What this series also explores strongly is the theme of loneliness within the family. We have four Turtles, and they're as close as they can be, but let's start with Raphael. He's always been the difficult and rebellious turtle. The story of his rebellion and his disagreement with Dio as leader has been explored many times, but usually we've just had four turtles with the same experiences, and he was different because that's his personality. Which is fine in itself, differences in personality do exist. But in IDW, we got a great idea. The turtles mutate simultaneously, but as a result of an attack by a cat, which we let be known as Old Hope, one turtle is separated from the others. That means that the turtles undergo their mutation together with the support of the also mutated Splinter, where Raphael is left on his own. And this lasts for many. The first issue shows us how they get united, but as I said, it perfectly explains his character. But that's not all. The other turtles also have their own lonely streak, like Leonardo and his Dark Leo arc, for example. Kitsune and Shredder brainwash him, and he later experienced what could be called post-traumatic stress disorder after regaining control. The Northampton arc focuses on that. But I think I'd say Leo is the least lonely. Michelangelo trait is interesting. His loneliness stems from his health. After Splinter becomes head of the Foot Clan, Mikey begins to follow his own path. He doesn't support his father like the other Turtles. He joins the Mutanima crew for a while, but he eventually drops out there too, because he has a completely different view from Old Hope of what they should be doing. Mikey is an idealist with a good heart. Old Hope is a cynic and realist, and probably you can call him also terrorist, so it's not very Mikey-like thing. Donatello also has an interesting loneliness theme. For the first time explored in the micro-series issue Donatello, we see how he meets Harold, a tech geek like himself, with whom he can share his passion. This issue begins by showing that when there is fight, the Turtles function as a unit. But when there is peace, they have little in common. No one shares Donatello's passion for technology and role-playing games. Later he also becomes incredibly lonely. In the future, he even creates some turtle characters as his sons. Quite a creepy storyline, if you ask me. And then there is Volume 6, the issues with their starting numbering. The first 4 issues sees the turtles each living their own life, and even when they are doing okay, like Mikey, they are very lonely. You could even say that Mikey, who has achieved tremendous professional success and fulfilled his dreams of being famous and well liked, feels the loneliest. So, this has already been a very long video. I really love this series, so I'll probably come back to it in the future videos. But for now, that's all. Thank you for watching, leave a like and subscribe if you liked it, and I hope to see you again in the next video. Bye!